was the last Saturday of August 1979, when the air in Henderson, Nevada, carried that strange mix of heat and silence, like the whole town was holding its breath. Clara Ridgeway had been babysitting for the Holloways for almost a year. She was 17, bright, responsible, and saving up for college. That evening, Mrs. Holloway asked her to arrive early, around 6:30 p.m., since she and her husband had a late charity dinner to attend. Clara showed up wearing her favorite yellow sweater, her hair tied back neatly, carrying a small bag of her own books and snacks. The house sat at the edge of a long, winding street, one of those places where the streetlights flickered just enough to make you uneasy. Neighbors remembered seeing Clara wave goodnight to the Holloways before the family's car rolled out of the driveway and disappeared down the hill. For the first few hours, everything seemed perfectly normal. Clara gave little Evan his dinner, helped him into his pajamas, and read him Goodnight Moon before tucking him into bed at 8:15 p.m. Around 8:40, a thunderstorm started rolling in, the kind that rattles the windows and makes the lights flicker for just a second too long. One of the neighbors, an elderly woman named Mrs. Carter, recalled seeing shadows moving in the Holloway kitchen window as the rain began to fall. She thought it was just Clara cleaning up the dishes. But then she heard a sudden, sharp noise, a scream, quick and muffled, followed by what sounded like glass breaking. She hesitated, unsure if she should call someone, but when the sound stopped, she convinced herself it was just the storm playing tricks on her mind. At exactly 9:43 p.m., another neighbor reported hearing something even stranger, a dragging sound, like furniture being moved, followed by one single slam of a door. When the police arrived hours later, they found the front door locked from the inside and every window latched shut. Evan was still sleeping soundly, clutching his stuffed bear, completely untouched. But Clara was gone. Her purse sat on the couch. Her shoes were near the rug by the stairs, and a pot of half-washed dishes was still in the sink. Nothing appeared stolen, and there were no signs of forced entry. Only one thing stood out, a wet, bare footprint near the back door, small, almost childlike, facing inward, as if whoever made it had walked into the house, not out. And from that moment on, the Holloway home was never the same. The investigation began before dawn. Detectives, dogs, and volunteers combed through the neighborhood while rainwater soaked the lawns and carried muddy footprints down the sidewalks. Inside the Holloway home, every light blazed as officers photographed, dusted, and searched for anything that could explain Clara Ridgeway's disappearance. Detective Henry Cross, a man known for his sharp instincts and short temper, led the case. He immediately noticed something strange. Nothing in the house seemed out of place, but there was an eerie stillness, like the house itself was hiding something. Clara's belongings were intact. Her bicycle was still chained outside, and even her book, half read, lay open on the coffee table as if she had planned to return to it. The phone line was working, but there were no outgoing calls that night. To the police, it looked like she simply vanished into thin air. As the days turned into weeks, the Holloway family's behavior began to draw suspicion. Mr. Holloway appeared nervous during questioning, constantly rubbing his temples and deflecting even the simplest inquiries. Mrs. Holloway, on the other hand, seemed calm, too calm. When asked if Clara had ever mentioned quitting, she replied coldly, "Girls like her change their minds all the time." But Detective Cross wasn't satisfied. He interviewed neighbors who mentioned hearing arguments between Clara and Mr. Holloway days before she disappeared. Some said they heard shouting. Others claimed to have seen Clara crying by her car in the driveway. Still, with no physical evidence, the police couldn't press charges. The Holloways stopped cooperating soon after, hiring a lawyer and insisting they were being harassed. By early 1980, the case began to crumble under the weight of dead ends. Leads dried up, witnesses moved away, and rumors filled the void. Some claimed Clara had run off with a boyfriend. Others whispered she'd been kidnapped by a stranger passing through town. But Detective Cross refused to let it go. He returned to the house alone several times over the years, convinced there was something beneath it, something no one wanted to find. He once told a fellow officer, "I can feel her here. The air changes when you step inside." But by 1981, the department officially closed the case, marking Clara Ridgeway as missing, presumed dead. The Holloways sold the property, left town quietly, and the tragedy faded into local legend. Yet for those who lived nearby, the memory lingered, and some nights they swore they could still hear that same faint scream when the storm clouds rolled in. In the spring of 2004, 25 years after that strange August night, Evan Holloway returned to Henderson. Now 29 years old, he was a quiet, withdrawn man with dark circles beneath his eyes and the kind of stillness that made people uncomfortable. He hadn't been back since he was a child, since the night his babysitter disappeared. His parents had both passed away under mysterious circumstances a few years earlier, leaving him the deed to the old family home. Locals still whispered about that house, claiming the lights flickered on some nights, even though it had been abandoned for years. Evan told himself he was only coming back to sell the property, to put his past to rest. But deep down, he knew there was another reason. Something had been calling him back, something that had haunted his dreams for as long as he could remember. When Evan first stepped onto the property, the house looked smaller than he remembered, but somehow more menacing. The paint had peeled away, the windows were boarded up, and ivy had crept its way through the cracks like veins spreading through the walls. The air around it felt thick, too quiet, like the rest of the neighborhood was holding its breath. As he pushed the front door open, the rusty hinges let out a low, painful creak that echoed through the empty halls. Inside, the smell hit him first, a heavy mix of rot, dust, and something faintly familiar, sweet, like old perfume. The furniture was still there, covered in sheets stiff with age, and a single child's toy sat on the floor near the stairs. His heart tightened when he saw it. It was his toy, the same stuffed bear that had been beside him the night Clara vanished. Its glass eyes were cracked, and the stitching along its belly had come loose, as if someone had opened it and sewed it back up again. Evan explored room after room, flashlight in hand, his footsteps stirring up decades of dust. In the living room, he found old photographs of his parents, smiling stiffly beside a teenage Clara. In every picture, Clara's expression seemed off. Her smile forced, her eyes tense, as if she knew something wasn't right. Then he reached the nursery, his old room. It was almost untouched. The wallpaper, once pale blue, had turned gray with age, and the rocking chair in the corner swayed slightly, though there was no breeze. As he approached the crib, he noticed something that made his stomach drop. A baby monitor still plugged into the wall. It shouldn't have been working. There hadn't been electricity in the house for years. But when he leaned in close, static whispered through the speaker, followed by a faint voice that made his blood run cold. It said softly, almost lovingly, "Evan, you came back." Evan froze when he heard the voice through the baby monitor. It was distant feminine and carried a warmth that was hauntingly familiar. He told himself it was just interference, maybe a radio frequency, maybe an old signal bouncing from somewhere nearby. But deep down, he knew better. The static buzzed again, louder this time, followed by soft breathing, like someone standing just on the other side of the wall. His flashlight flickered. And in that brief strobe of light, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. A narrow seam running along the nursery wall. A faint outline of what looked like a hidden door. Dust clung to the edges, and when he brushed it with his fingers, the paint peeled away, revealing an old wooden panel underneath. His hands trembled as he pushed against it. It resisted for a moment, then gave way with a dry, echoing snap. Behind it was a staircase descending into darkness, a place that shouldn't have existed. The air grew colder with every step he took downward. The basement below was narrow, carved unevenly into the earth, the walls damp with condensation. It didn't look like a storage space. It looked like a place built for secrecy. Evan's flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing something that made his breath hitch. Children's drawings, hundreds of them, covering every inch. Crayon lines, faded and cracked with age, showing images of the house, his family, and Clara. She appeared again and again, sometimes standing behind him, sometimes drawn with hollow eyes and outstretched arms. Some drawings showed her smiling, others showed her face blacked out entirely. Evan's heart pounded as he recognized the handwriting beneath each sketch. His own, from when he was 4 years old. But he didn't remember making them. It was as if the walls had been preserving a part of his memory he was never meant to see again. Then, near the far corner, his flashlight caught a small wooden box resting on the floor, half buried in dust. He knelt and opened it, and inside were objects that shouldn't have survived the years. Clara's silver necklace, tarnished but recognizable. Her hairbrush, still tangled with blonde strands, and an old Polaroid photo of Clara holding him as a baby. But something was wrong. Her face in the picture had been violently scratched out with something sharp. On the back of the photograph, faint handwriting read, "He knows." The words sent a chill through his spine. As he stared at them, the baby monitor crackled again. Only this time, the voice was closer, clearer. It whispered his name, tenderly but accusingly. "Evan, you left me here." The flashlight began to flicker wildly, and from somewhere behind him came the soft, rhythmic creak of the rocking chair upstairs, rocking back and forth on its own. Evan stumbled backward, heart hammering in his chest, his flashlight beam shaking across the dusty walls. The voice didn't stop. It filled the narrow room, echoing from everywhere and nowhere at once, soft, almost pleading, yet laced with something ancient and angry. He shouted, demanding to know where she was, what she wanted, but the only reply came through the baby monitor. "You saw it, Evan. You just don't remember?" The room seemed to pulse with the sound of her words. Then, without warning, the monitor went silent and the air grew still. He noticed something glinting beneath the box, a trapdoor made of iron, its hinges rusted but intact. It took all his strength to pull it open, and what he saw beneath made his blood run cold. A shallow pit lined with broken tiles and bones, small, white, unmistakably human. Among them lay scraps of fabric, yellowed with age, and one piece he recognized instantly. The pattern matched Clara's favorite sweater from the night she disappeared. Evan sank to his knees, trembling, realizing he was staring at what had been hidden for 25 years. But then the whisper returned, clearer now, filling his ears as if she were standing right beside him. "He did this to me, Evan, your father." The memories came flooding back in fragments, the muffled shouting, his mother's sobs, the crash of something heavy falling down the stairs. He remembered Clara's hand grabbing his, her voice telling him to run and hide. And then, nothing but darkness. His father had told him she'd left suddenly, but standing there now, in the cold glow of his flashlight, he saw the truth carved into the walls. There were symbols etched into the stone, rings, markings, and shapes he couldn't understand. He took a step closer and saw one word repeated in shaky handwriting: renewal. The same word appeared in his father's old journals, the ones that spoke of sacrificing innocence to preserve life. The Holloways hadn't been victims. They had been participants. His father had killed Clara as part of something twisted, something that the family had been hiding long before he was even born. Evan didn't sleep that night. He sat in the basement until sunrise, reading through the old journals and the Polaroids, listening to the faint hum of the baby monitor that somehow never lost power. Every so often, he felt a cold hand brush his shoulder, not threatening, but guiding. By the time he left the house, his face was expressionless, his eyes hollow, as if he'd made peace with something no one else could understand. 2 weeks later, both of his parents were found dead in their new home across the state. The coroner said it was heart failure, simultaneous, inexplicable, almost synchronized. The police found no evidence of foul play. But on the mirror in their bedroom, written in the faint trail of condensation, were 2 words that chilled investigators to their core: she's free. And from that night forward, no one ever saw Evan Holloway again. They say the Holloway house no longer exists. The land was sold, the structure torn down, and a new family home was built over it years later. But the builders, those who worked late into the night, told stories of hearing footsteps in the dirt foundation, soft humming beneath the concrete, and the faint scent of perfume drifting through the air when no one was around. Some even swore they heard a woman's voice whispering through the static of their radios, repeating one name: Evan. No one ever learned what truly happened to him after that night. His car was found abandoned near the Nevada border, keys still in the ignition, doors unlocked. The police ruled it as voluntary disappearance, but locals have a different theory. They say he didn't vanish, he stayed behind, trapped between guilt and justice, bound to the same house that kept Clara's secret buried for so long. And on stormy nights, when the wind howls just right, the townspeople still claim you can see 2 silhouettes standing in the ruins, one tall, one small, watching the road in silence. Maybe it's Clara, maybe it's Evan. Or maybe it's the house itself, waiting for the next soul brave enough or foolish enough to listen to the whispers in the dark.
If you liked this video, don't forget to hit that like button, share it with your friends, and drop your thoughts in the comments below. Most importantly, subscribe and hit the bell icon so the next secret finds you first.